politics based on principle and axioms. We decide things. Perhaps it's just cogito. Perhaps we just put something out there, like Ayn Rand or whatever. We just put something out there and then build a philosophy. This is a politics of axioms, as opposed to simply a politics that denies the very constitutive dimension of politics itself. This politics of fear. Oh my God! If you do this, if you print this gun, if you do this, arranging just the big enough constituency of fearful people. Right? This is a politics that denies political process. Okay. It is just simply about, well, I'll get to that in a second. Are you following me so far? Is everything all right? Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, on the revolutions.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
You mentioned the United States, and at the time the United States wasn't a democracy during the American Revolution.
I don't think the United States was ever a democracy.
Okay.
I'm still not now.
Okay, so do you believe that the revolutionary, the time that a revolution would never come to a point, and is that just something for democracies? Or
No, I'm not making a historical argument like, well, it would have never happened. What I'm saying is, like, there would never be a point where you go, all right, God is on our side, it's time, we took the poll, 99% approved, let's go. Actually, right, as with the kind of history's kind of teased out, only about 3 or 4% of people even fought the revolution, right? The majority of people are always these kinds of, not that there was a middle class back then, but people are just kind of on the sidelines, willing to get back to work or whatever.
What about other revolutions around the world?
Yeah, the French Revolution, Robespierre. This was a totalitarian revolution, but still the founding crime of French politics and real democracy. Okay, but there's what I'm trying to say is there's no legitimacy to it. Okay, there's no real act of like, oh, that was a murderous, bloody revolution, right?
So Tunisia, the Arab Spring.
Same thing. Like, what are we disagreeing about?
Well, no, I thought that you had said that there's not a single point where you just get up and say it's revolution time.
No, I'm saying there's no point where you can make the excuse to yourself that like, okay, yeah. Okay. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You simply have to risk the act. Like
I'm not arguing with that. I was just
yeah. Tunisia's the greatest example. It's like, yeah, things come to a head, but there's always got to be that first guy who's like, fuck it. And he sets himself on fire or something, And it's not guaranteed that the whole thing follows from there. You have to assume the abyss of the act. You're not going to be followed. Okay? Perhaps you can kind of, everybody sees, all right, it's the mood, it's time. But that's not necessarily heroic. Now you're saying like, this might happen, this might pop off. But the only true emancipatory politics is this kind of virtue terrorism where you just, I assume the act. I claim responsibility for the act. There's no excuse for what I'm doing. This is a good exchange, thank you.
Thanks.
So, what is the true utopia then, right? We're all called utopians. All of us. We use it as a slur, it's used as a slur against us, it's the most common word, it's banal at this point, but what is the true utopia? Slavoj Žižek says, it's the West of the 1990s. Okay, he says, at that point, and there's I think even the neoclassical school, even the Austrian school, kind of believed this, that the West of the 1990s was like this perfection of civilization. Like we had kind of reached the commanding heights, it was a popular documentary at the time, the commanding heights of civilization and economic, progress. So we thought then, and I think the New Left still kind of thought, that those democratic forms, the ones that still exist now, those democratic forms of the 1990s would last forever. Okay? We would only need to tweak them. And here's monetarism, right? Here's fiscal policy. Here's supranational Maastricht. This is European Union, these kinds of things. We only need better union. We only need better integrated policy. And these democratic institutions are permanent. All right? We've reached the final stage of civilization. Add a few more civil rights, things like this, right? But here's what I want to say. This is a totalizing ideology, okay? This is, the popular word, right, of power discourses, hegemonic, all right? This is an ideology that does not allow for the existence of other ideologies. It takes all the cards for itself. It tells us that ideological times are over, that all we can do is play the realistic game of accepting trends and the general will, and that there is no recourse, but what? I mean, literally, like, what is the current politics of today? Like, well, participate in the process, obey the general will. So what is there then for us, ideologues, if perhaps we want to be revolutionary ideologues? I think then there's only asymmetrical ideological warfare. Okay? Finally, this is the part I want to talk about. So.
All right.
Yeah, no, right. St. Just said in 1792, every king is a rebel, every king is a usurper. 1792, all right? This was the year before 1793. The phrase is a cornerstone of emancipatory politics. There is no legitimate king. Okay, being a king isn't legitimate in itself. Being a king is an act of usurpation. Okay, Since being a king is itself usurpation, in the same sense, this is Proudhon, the French anarchist, right, who's famously, property is theft. Well, he didn't literally mean that. He meant property as privilege is theft. What he's saying is like, privilege itself is illegitimate. Political privilege is illegitimate. Being a king, political privilege, any kind of institution you want to build for yourself, by its nature is violent and illegitimate, okay? So, we as revolutionaries, if we are to be them, must suspend the distinction between illegitimate and legitimate state power. Legitimate revolution is an oxymoron, okay? Oxymoronic, not possible. Get away with it, do away with it. Right. Political violence. This is all I got left this way, that's all I got. Benjamin, right? Benjamin, he's part of the Frankfurt School, but he said divine violence, this is Vox Populi, Vox Dei, basically that, you know, just the crowds rushing out into the street, the kind of Tunisia situation where like, oh my God, it's gone crazy all of a sudden. He calls this divine violence. It just happens. There really is no integrated philosophy to it. It's a decision made in absolute solitude. I've kind of talked about this earlier. There's no cover of the big other. It's extra-moral. But even if it's extra-moral, that doesn't mean it's immoral. Okay, that's another thing I'm trying to say. There is no objective qualification or category of this kind of action, all right? It doesn't give the agent the license at the same time to just kill anybody they want. It doesn't make you innocent, but it doesn't make you guilty. Okay? Now, the gun printer. All right? The gun printer, I guess this as the agent of the gun printer, offers an unanswerable, symbolic, utopian act. This is literally what I think now. We've dived through all this. This is literally what I think this is, what we're doing. Okay? Whether the gun works, whether the gun doesn't work, whether it takes 3-4 years, whether it takes 20 years, whether it never happens at all. The effort desires to reconfigure the established order of social space. Okay? That is not just talking. More powerfully, it is the spectacle of a different order. But we can have spectacles of different orders all the time. Everybody imagines their own utopia. What's great about this one is that it can't be appropriated by the existing order. There's no way to integrate what we're proposing in the current politics. There's no way to do it. All right? Because what are we suggesting? We're saying that, I mean, we want to change the coordinates of political reality itself. Not only do we want to produce the gun file, right? We don't just want to make it. We want to tell the system, you, the system, will be complicit in the file's distribution. Okay? You will be complicit in its propagation. Because of the system you have built, we will propagate the idea, we will propagate the material reality of the gun, the symbol of political power. Okay? What you're doing is making that power itself, that biopolitical power, complicit in its own destruction. Okay? Not just literal destruction, all right? It's actual diminishment, contempt for it, and then the equalization of political power. The system participates in its own oblivion, okay, by this act. I fully believe this. You know, not blowing smoke. Don't be terrorized by post-political politics. You're in this school, you're in a public institution, you're almost halfway there, right? I can't believe like almost any of us as adults made it this far, right? And that are like sitting in this room, okay? Because the point is to kind of like co-opt you, make you either a ballot stooge or some kind of wage slave or something, but you're here. Don't further be terrorized by the post-political biopolitics. Everyone right now, right, is like, oh my God, I'm so sick of this election. You know, it's that kind of resignation. It's like, well, the process is it. And this was where we were thinking before we began gun printing. We were saying, well, the process is it. What can we do that isn't political process? That's where it began. That's how it got to here. So, let's give the formula, right? Don't obey this injunction, this totalizing ideology, even though it doesn't state it. It assumes that ideological times are over, and that all you can do is become pragmatic and participate in the process. No. We must now dare to enact the impossible. I mean, what was gun printing imagined? We didn't do something that we thought we could do. We literally tried to do something that we thought we couldn't do, okay? Because of how we imagined it would change things. Okay? That's what wiki weapons are about, reaching for unimaginable shifts in the coordinates of political reality. If I can stand up. Precisely because they are unimaginable. As if we had no choice, we must literally begin enacting utopia. I mean, you all have your projects. You all have who you think you're going to be, what you're going to do. Okay? But if you believe in this reality, not just some utopia that you can talk about, well, how would we plan the perfect society? No. That's over. All the utopias from Thomas More to even the dystopias, they've been imagined, okay? There isn't going to be some day where we convince everyone, libertarian politics, Gary Johnson, right? Vote Gary Johnson. It's not going to happen. It's not built to happen. That system doesn't allow for that ideology, all right? That system doesn't leave up for debate. We watch presidential debate. That system doesn't leave up for debate the conditions of democratic representation. No, that system is simply a simulation of agonism, right? Meant to kind of denature and deneuter violence itself, political violence itself. We must literally begin enacting utopia. You must create it, all right? There is no process. You must literally, seriously begin trying to make this unimaginable world. Okay, I think this is kind of what seasteading is about. We proposed printing guns because we thought it was the most ambitious thing we could think of. It was the most ridiculous, outrageous, ambitious thing we could think of. We thought, oh my God, wow, strong crypto. Like the early crypto anarchists, right, of the 1990s, they thought if we could just lock the government out, we could really begin passing information and data to each other, images, data. Well, they weren't being futuristic enough because now material goods, okay, with these replicators. Now you lock the government out through strong cryptography. I mean, what's the reality right now of the computation against strong? You can't break AES cryptography in a billion years. Literally, in a billion years, you can't do it, all right? You've locked the government out of transactions, daily transactions and communications, okay? So now you pass data, you pass images through the internet, but they didn't anticipate that now you could pass object, okay? That's 3D printing, that's gun printing. We chose the gun because it's a symbol of political power, it's a symbol of emancipatory politics and virtue terrorism, okay? I'm not talking about imagining utopia, I'm not talking about planning. Revolutionary moments now demand practice. That's my speech. I'd be happy to take questions.
Do you have a printable gun that actually works?
We have not been able to print a gun because that's a felony. But we have like 11 designs.
But don't you need to actually print it out in order to test whether they're
Yes,
reliable?
that's precisely what we're doing in about 3 weeks.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
You got to get the license.
How to get the license to do it?
Why? Well, okay.
Well, because, yeah.
How would they already have that figured out that you need a license to print a gun?
Well, because they determined what I was making fell within their jurisdiction. Okay. Which, why wouldn't you, right? It's in their interest. So, any other questions? I thought I saw one. Yes, go ahead.
Well, if somebody else was earlier, I mean, I don't please get all the questions.
Say something.
What parts constitute a gun?
You mean
That's like the grips on the handle.
You mean legally?
Physically, what parts?
The lower
Low
receiver.
receiver is the regulated component of the gun. That's literally the thing that is the gun for regulatory purposes. But does you have a receiver and like grips and vertical handles and things? These are accounted for by the ATF. So I guess the thing that makes the gun, though, if you look up the definition of a firearm, it's simply anything that can be converted easily, right? That can fire an explosive projectile. Okay, so it's actually, a can of soup, I guess, basically with a wire at the back. You know what I mean? Like, it's whatever they say it is. If it can shoot a bullet. Any other questions? Yes. Nice shirt.
You said that they can't control the distribution of these guns because it's just digital. I've read some science fiction where they can control the feed stock
Sure.
to make the guns.
Yeah, like what would be a realistic way of regulating plastic, right? Regulating the raw materials for primer or brass or metal. Yeah, right. How logistically possible is that to regulate plastic? I don't know. Are they going to attempt it? Probably. There's going to be overreach like that. But look at how quickly democracy is murdering itself right now in the West, right? Just trying to sustain weak welfare programs, I don't think we have the prospect of a very strong totalizing government 20 years from now. You know what I mean? Despotic, sure. Drones, all that stuff, sure. Can they control plastic? Well, we'll see. Yeah.
So what's the timeline for whenever these 3D printers are able to print themselves?
I think the timeline is determined by people like you and me deciding like, oh, okay, well, this is how we do printable circuits. And so I'm talking to VC right now with some different ideas about how to advance. Literally, it has to be you. It's the fucking point of my speech. There's not some timeline. It's not like, 20 years. I mean, no, the 20 years are determined by people like you going like, okay, this is how I want to work on this thing right here. All right, I want to affect the utopia. I don't want to pretend and imagine and theorize about it. I'm not going to be some Rothbard. I'm not going to write about it. It's been written. Okay, I'm not telling you to not pursue your interests, but what I'm trying to say is don't fall into this current ideology because we are, and you participated, and here we are. We're UT, right? I hope that wasn't combative or anything.
No,
I'd be happy to. Oh, go ahead.
I read this article about how there might be regulation that would require all 3D printers to have a DRM chip, and I realize that's not totally relevant since your designs would be open source, but
it's relevant.
Okay.
It's not regulated yet. It's actually a patent that already it now exists. It was awarded a couple months ago.
Yeah, I just read about that.
Yeah. So this patent is owned by one of these patent hoarding firms that gets their bread and butter by suing people for intellectual property violations. So they just hold the patent right now. But I believe the patent will be developed by these manufacturers, especially people like Stratasys. And the way it works is there's authorization codes in the software, authorization codes in the printer, and then the authorization codes back at the kind of manufacturer. Okay, these are all linked together. They communicate with each other. Not only if you make a kind of already copyrighted object will you be stopped, but literally if you make a kind of illegal form. See what I'm saying? Well, it looks like a gun, so illegal. I don't think that's really something to worry about because the United States messed up so badly with DRM on music. So poorly. They did so badly in the 2000s, and they're just now kind of coming back around. And that whole ACTA lobby, that's in retreat for now. They'll come back, but I mean, I really don't think DRM of 3D printed. I mean, honestly, I think it's futile. I almost hope that they do pursue it because it's just like it's not going to work.
It'll bankrupt the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to work. Yeah.
So on laser printers right now, there's a very subtle marking on each page, which
Printer's mark.
serializes which printer it came out of.
Yeah.
I think like technically doing something similar with a 3D printer would not be very hard.
Well, think about it. You get the access to the material, so it's like, it's gone. But the thing is, we're hypothesizing like a kind of infrastructure of economics that resembles the current day, right? Where HP gives you your 3D printer. What the kind of ultimate goal of 3D printing is right now is to have 3D printers totally DIY open source that kind of make themselves, right? Who knows how long that's going to be. But once it's outside of that kind of, that mainframe of kind of distribution, no one applies those things, right? It's just like with PGP. No, in the 1990s, everyone was trying to be like, well, PGP is dangerous. Let's do key escrow. Everyone must be required to do this with their PGPs. No one did that, So even if there's going to be a law about it, like, well, you better have an ID chip on your 3D. No, it's not going to work. I'm too optimistic. Maybe I'm naive about it. I just don't think about that. How can you can legislate it, but especially since there are already so many DIY projects and just kind of garage projects. I mean, the 3D printing industry right now, you can go on Kickstarter any day and there's a new one. PandaBot was recently kind of stopped but redone. Every other week there's a new kind of 3D printer being built by just some group that's not, and perhaps these people become the manufacturers that begin to regulate their printers, but it's just so fluid, so dynamic. I think things are changing faster. They're not going to look like the 1950s. Any more questions? I've got the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto here. I'd love to read you the last paragraph. Yeah?
Do you plan on designing anything other than guns?
Yeah, I'm interested in that. In fact, we've got 3 designs. This man's been helping me on my VC pitch. We've got things actually we're proposing to a number of venture capitalists that are related to 3D printing. One very directly related to 3D printing. So yeah. Because why? Because it's in my interest too. So, why not make a lot of money and then carry on my revolutionary activities? So. Whoa, you guys have any other questions? I really hope I didn't bore you guys. Honestly, I want to give you something straight about I think emancipatory politics are built on a kind of virtue terrorism. You've got to oppose. Go ahead, yeah.
With any of your other interviews, do you go into this kind
No,
of
never
philosophical background?
Never have. They're not ready for it. They don't ask it,
I think you should. If you just compress it down to a soundbite.
Yeah,
you should
exactly.
say,
Yeah,
no,
no,
you
Just play it like a soundboard.
Lacan, the other.
I don't think you need to say
Or
Lacan.
I mean, like, if it was like a live interview or something like that, I don't think they would do that with you.
I've done a lot of these.
Have they done any of them live?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I did
Sort of.
I've done lots of radio interviews live. Yeah, but we never really get to that because conservatives want to talk about the Second Amendment. And I mean, it's like everybody's got their own kind of wheelhouse or whatever. So I'm introduced to what they want to talk about. I talk about it. I don't think I'd be dishonest. I'm just, like I said, it's an open door. Just no one's knocking. Or whatever. Mixed metaphors. Any other questions? Yeah. And I'm sorry, man. I didn't have all the energy I should have. I was just like, I woke up sick today. So yeah.
Can you read the last paragraph of that book?
Okay, I've got the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto. No one feel obligated to stay if you don't want to stay. I mean, this is a UT book, by the way. Yeah, it's pretty great. Now, Crypto Anarchy, by the way, I didn't really explain it.
What is that?
Yeah, I will. I'll explain it right now. 1988, 1987 into the beginning of the 1990s, there was a group of people called the cypherpunks, and they were trying to solve, not the cyberpunks, but the cypherpunks. And they knew that, they anticipated that mathematics was getting to a point, especially with computerization, that we could create unsolvable, relatively unsolvable, like onerously solvable encryption, okay? And in fact, people like Julian Assange were working on this before they dropped out of college and everything. Satoshi, for example, the guy who invented Bitcoin, was a cypherpunk. They anticipated that too. They knew that when we had the right encryption, when we had the right stuff, we could put that in our software. We could put that in what they called the cyber, well, not what they call it, the crypto net. Basically, they could build their own independent internet, which in some ways resembles what's considered the deep web or the dark net today. And they built a lot of things that looked like WikiLeaks back in the day. Things weren't integrated. Culturally, a lot of people weren't using the internet. But the technology was there in the 80s, early 80s or late 80s for PGP, which is called pretty good privacy. And actually, I'm glad you asked that because PGP was considered by the United States to be so dangerous that it was on the United States munitions list, okay, the USML, which is the regulation for the Arms Export Control Act passed by Congress. Literally, PGP was considered a munition, as dangerous as like a bomb, okay? And to share that with someone is to give someone an illegal kind of weapon of war, okay? This is why Zimmerman was practicing emancipatory politics in my mind. He gave it away anyway. Literally, legally, he gave away a bomb. He gave away the bomb, if you will. It doesn't matter, there's no difference. It was espionage, it was treason, whatever. He gave it away. That's why, it's totally banal now, right? It didn't destroy the world. You can get a PGP encryption client on your UT email account, right? Just click a button, all right? Share the public key or whatever. Not totally banal. Encrypted email. No one cares. Corporations use it. It's easy. But the crypto anarchists realize that, like, okay, well, this will be government-proof just functionally. It'll take too long, and if everyone uses it, it's impossible. It's functionally impossible to regulate this and to get at people's hard drives, people's encrypted communications, these kinds of things. So they realized let's start locking the government out of our private affairs, and this is where German anarchism comes in really well. Right? Gustav Landauer said the state is a condition. He said it's just simply a mode of behavior. Okay, if we begin to contract truly separate private relationships with each other, disintermediating the state, what can they do? What, forcibly insert themselves into your PG? They can't, literally they can't. So cryptography is the foundation, what has been called by some hackers and other people, the First Amendment of the internet. Everything begins there, and kind of, you force open a space. Now we hope to pass guns through it. Okay. I thought that was good. Can I read you this last paragraph?
Please.
Yeah, please.
So many of you voted for Romney, I know. You guys. Oh, you guys. Oh, okay.
Where did that come from?
It's just intuition. You don't have to admit it.
I didn't vote for Romney.
So everyone voted for Romney, raise your hand.
It's okay. You vote for Chufu. Okay, I'm just going to give it to you.
Romney because I'm trying to make the end come more quickly.
Right. Well, okay, well.
Alan Greenspan.
Did anyone else write in Sarah Palin?
Okay then. This is by Tim May. Tim May is actually, you know what? You guys heard of Jim Bell or Tim May?
Tell us.
Oh, you young libertarians.
Oh, philosopher.
Okay. Jim Bell predicted assassination politics. I can't believe you guys don't know about this. All right. He's one of the early crypto anarchists. He believed that, like, with encryption, you have totally digital black markets, Deadpool black markets connected. Totally inaccessible, and these would be able to facilitate things like contracts on anybody's head. You guys have seen Intrade, right? The prediction market. Just imagine X-Trade, the assassination market. Okay? Seriously, no, these things probably will exist.
They do already.
Well, they do in farcical ways. I don't think there's a real one yet. Maybe there is, right?
Well, if it did exist, why would we be the ones who know that?
You libertarians.
So,
I don't know. Perhaps you'd be interested. You'd seek it out. Oh, you mean like literally killing people? That's what you're saying. Look, I figured if someone's gonna know about it, it's you. It's not gonna be these like plugged-in mass culture. Like, okay, yeah, Drake. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay. So,
I think what he's trying to say is that the memory imprint is still on society.
the memory imprint.
The memory imprint creates the object, and so.
I'm totally out of my depth. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's how we know it still exists.
Oh, you mean like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We know it still exists because we saw the word for it. It hasn't been forgotten.
Some deep shit.
Yeah.
Assassination politics. I'm just real quick. I just think it's really interesting. basically, you know, a million people all over the world would, you know, donate $5 to, like, because they hate Barack Obama or something. No, I'm not saying Barack Obama. Just name your politician. You know what I mean? Name your politician. Jim Bell was predicting, look, it would be so dangerous to be a politician in this world. No one would dare become more than like a mayor of a town. Seriously, because I mean, there'd be enough people in the world at any given time, especially in a world of 8 billion people, to kill this man on demand. I mean, it would literally prevent this kind of government. I mean, that's dangerous. I'm not advocating. I'm just saying this is what he predicted. And people hold themselves out to be representatives of these hit squads online. You can get them through Tor hidden services. I don't think any of them are real. I've seen some of them. I just, okay, yeah, this man's acting like he my bullshit alarm is just like. So, Tim May, though, is kind of like the father of crypto anarchy because he spelled out the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto. And he styled it, you know, nicely after the Communist Manifesto. But it was very quick. It's not kind of onerous and built on labor theory of value bullcrap and stuff. This is The Spectres Haunting the World, The Spectre of Crypto Anarchy. This is in 1988. I was 24 years ago. I was born when this was written. Computer technology is on the verge of providing, he's so prescient. Computer technology is on the verge of providing the ability for individuals and groups to communicate and interact with each other in a totally anonymous manner. We know this is a fundamental truth today. Okay, it wasn't then. Two persons may exchange messages, conduct business, negotiate electronic contracts without ever knowing the true name, legal identity of the other. This is eBay. This is Amazon. Okay. Interactions over networks will be untraceable via extensive rerouting of encrypted packets and tamper-proof boxes which implement cryptographic protocols, VPNs, okay, rerouting of network. It all exists. With nearly perfect assurance against any tampering. Reputations will be of central importance, right? A++, would buy again, this kind of thing. Far more important in dealings than any credit. You guys know about ELANs? Yeah. I do a ton of work. It's great. Contractor market, right? Based on reputation, you get to see their portfolio, you get to see their reputation. I don't know who any of these people are. Ostensibly they're in Pakistan or Malaysia or somewhere, you know what I mean? Great workers. Reputation. The internet allows for this kind of virtual space of just reputation producing. I don't have to know them to carry out efficient transactions. The technology for this revolution, and it will surely be both a social and economic revolution, has existed in theory for the past decade. The methods are based upon public key encryption, zero-knowledge interactive proof systems, various software protocols for interaction, authentication, and verification. The focus has now been on academic conferences in the US, okay, ISDN. He's predicting ISDN, satellite, broadband, bandwidth of sufficient capacity to really allow things like what was thought impossible back in the day, you know, high-resolution images, these kinds of things, totally banal now, not even controversial. He was saying, oh, it'll come, you know, and he was right. Of course he was right. The state will, of course, try to slow or halt the spread of this technology. He's talking about PGP now. Now read this in light of gun printing, right? Citing national security concerns, use of the technology by drug dealers and tax evaders, and fears of societal disintegration. Any of these concerns will be valid. Crypto anarchy will allow national secrets to be traded freely. WikiLeaks. All right, and will allow illicit and stolen materials to be traded. An anonymous computerized market will even make a possible abhorrent markets, oh here we go, for assassination and extortion. You know, the extortion example, do you guys remember the hacker from Anonymous that said, you know, I've got Mitt Romney's tax returns, I want a million bitcoins. Do you remember this? It was a very tiny headline for like a day. You know, it's just a tiny, I think there's going to be more of that. There is. I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying extortion markets, I think, will become more prevalent. Various criminal and foreign elements will be active users of what he was calling CryptoNet. But this will not halt the spread of, and really, he had to come up with something like that at the time because there wasn't a web back then. We don't even use the terms anymore, but there was only the net back then, which was this kind of user group thing, mostly connected to public institutions and stuff. And there was only the beginning of the building of these horizontal connections in the net that we know as now the web. It's just kind of impossibly dense horizontal connections everywhere. That's the web. He called this thing CryptoNet. He thought it would be built on its own as its own purpose. Turns out it was even better than he imagined. Just as the technology of printing altered and reduced the power of medieval guilds and social power structure, add material printing, right? I gave a speech in London. I said the same thing. I was like, you know, the printing press allowed for Protestantism, allowed for like this inversion of order itself. It was saying, look, I don't need the church to tell me what God is trying to I mean, seriously, like a whole kind of ethical project began just because like I had a Bible now in my hand. I mean, it's insane what this tool was allowed to do. So the printing press does the same thing. It reduces the modern guilds. Who are the modern guilds? Well, the manufacturers, right? What are the modern social power structures? You know,
Excuse me, what's the name of that book?
Crypto Anarchy, Cyber States, and Pirate Utopias. It's pretty much the greatest book title of all time. So too will cryptologic method.